All right, get ready because today we're diving deep into something truly wild. The idea that memories might not be just a brain thing. You sent in some sources about memories, but not the typical kind, like remembering where you left your keys. We're talking about the possibility that memories could exist outside the brain.
Yeah, it really challenges that classic view we have of the brain as the sole keeper of memories. What we're exploring here is the concept of cellular memory, the idea that cells throughout our bodies, not just in the brain, might have the potential to learn and remember things.
You submitted both a news article and the original scientific paper, both about a study with huge implications. I know scientific papers can be a bit intimidating, so we're going to break it down for you, make it clear and exciting. Basically, scientists found evidence that cells outside the brain, like in your kidneys and nerves, can learn and form memories, kind of like neurons do.
Right, the researchers in this study, they worked with human nerve and kidney cells in a lab. They wanted to see how these cells would respond to chemical signals, signals designed to mimic how brain cells learn. And they did something really clever. They engineered these cells to glow when certain memory genes were activated.
So they basically gave these cells a signal to show us when they were learning, right?
Exactly. And these genes, they're the same ones that are active in brain cells during learning.
And here's where it gets even more interesting. They used a technique based on something we all know about learning, spaced repetition. Like, you know, how studying a little bit each day is more effective than cramming the night before a test. They exposed these cells to those chemical signals, but in spaced intervals, mimicking that spaced learning approach.
And what they found was amazing. These non-brain cells showed that same spaced learning effect we see in neurons. They glowed brighter, meaning those memory genes were more active when they were stimulated in those spaced intervals, compared to just one single long exposure.
Wow, that's pretty groundbreaking. So are we saying that our bodies are way smarter than we thought? Like, could my stomach be remembering that extra slice of pizza I had last night?
That's a great question. And honestly, it opens up some really interesting possibilities. We can't say for sure about your stomach and the pizza, but this research definitely suggests that things are a lot more complex and interconnected than we used to think. It hints at the possibility that this cellular cognition might be much more widespread, which could have huge impacts on how we understand memory disorders, learning strategies, even diseases like diabetes or cancer.
Okay, before we get into those implications, I have to ask, how does this cellular memory actually work at a deeper level? What's going on inside these cells?
Well, the mechanism probably involves these really intricate signaling pathways and gene activation, things that are common across many different cell types. This study, it focused on two key pathways, PKA and PKC. Think of these pathways like communication networks within the cells.
Okay, I'm fine.
So when a cell encounters something, a stimulus, it sets off this chain reaction of signals through these pathways, and that ultimately activates specific genes. And those genes then modify how the cell behaves.
So it's like creating a memory of that experience, but at the cellular level?
Exactly. It's like a domino effect. One signal triggers another, and in the end, the cell changes how it acts, almost as if it's learned something new.
Wow, this is incredible. It really makes you appreciate how complex and intelligent the human body really is, if even our kidneys can learn what other intelligence might be hidden throughout our bodies.
That's what makes this research so fascinating. It challenges us to rethink our assumptions about where intelligence resides and how our bodies function as a whole. But before we get too philosophical, let's bring it back down to earth. How could these findings be used to actually improve our health and well-being? What are some tangible examples? Okay, so imagine a future where we could actually tailor diabetes treatments based on what your pancreas remembers about what you've eaten. Like if we could understand how those pancreatic cells store and recall information about past meals, we might be able to come up with more personalized and effective therapies.
So instead of a one-size-fits-all approach?
Right, exactly. Maybe we could fine-tune insulin regimens or even create dietary interventions, all based on your individual pancreatic memory.
Wow, that would be incredible, especially for people who are managing diabetes every day. What about other areas? Could this concept of cellular memory be applied to tackling something like cancer?
That's another area with so much potential. I mean, we already know that cancer cells can sort of learn from chemotherapy and adapt over time, developing resistance to the treatment. But if we could understand that process better and maybe even manipulate their cellular memory,
You're saying we could outsmart the cancer cells?
potentially, yes.
Hmm.
It might be possible to develop more effective cancer therapies, ones that can overcome that resistance.
That's mind-blowing. We're talking about revolutionizing how we approach some of the biggest health challenges we face.
It's true, but it's important to remember that this research is still pretty new. We're just starting to scratch the surface of what we can learn about cellular memory and what it all means.
It makes you think about how much we still don't know about our own bodies. It's like we've been so focused on the brain as the command center. But what if it's more like a network? A network of intelligent cells, each with its own ability to learn and adapt.
That's a really interesting way to think about it. This research definitely challenges that traditional view. The one where the brain is in charge and the body just follows orders. It suggests that intelligence might be more distributed, a property of the cells themselves.
That's a pretty big shift in perspective. It makes you wonder if all of our cells have this capacity for memory and learning. What are the limits? Are there different types of cellular memories? What kind of information are they storing?
Those are all great questions. And honestly, we don't have all the answers yet. Like I said, it's early days. But there are some clues coming from other research areas. For example, studies on immune cells. They've shown that these cells can actually remember past encounters with pathogens.
Like viruses and bacteria.
Exactly. And that allows them to mount a much faster and more effective response. The next time they encounter that same threat, it's actually the basis of how vaccines work.
So our immune system is kind of like a huge library, a library of cellular memories.
Precisely. Helping to protect us from things we've encountered before. And that's just one example. There's more and more evidence that this cellular memory idea, it plays a role in all sorts of processes, from wound healing to organ regeneration. It seems like our cells are constantly gathering information about their environment and using that information to adapt and respond in ways that help us survive and thrive.
That's amazing. So it's not just about individual cells remembering things, it's this whole network of communication and memory happening throughout the body.
Absolutely. This research really highlights how interconnected everything is. It's not just the brain calling the shots. It's a much more dynamic and collaborative process, with cells all over the body talking to each other and sharing information.
I can see why you said this research was so captivating. It really changes how you think about how your body works and how we might approach health and disease in the future.
Exactly. And while we still have a lot to learn, this new understanding of cellular memory has the potential to completely change medicine and healthcare. Think about it. If we can harness the power of cellular memory, we might be able to develop therapies that work with the body's natural intelligence, leading to treatments that are more personalized, more effective, and maybe even curative.
So we've gone from thinking about memories as something that happens only in the brain to realizing that our whole body is this incredible network of memory and learning. And that has huge implications for how we understand ourselves, how we approach health and disease, even what it means to be human.
You got it. This research really encourages us to rethink our relationship with our bodies, to see them not just as passive vessels, but as active partners in our lives, full of intelligence and the capacity for learning and adaptation. And I think that's a really empowering and hopeful message.
Yeah, it's amazing to think we're just scratching the surface here. It makes you wonder what other mind-blowing discoveries are out there, just waiting to be uncovered about our own bodies.
That's the beauty of science, right? It's this ongoing journey of discovery. And this whole area of cellular memory, it's opened up a whole new path for us to explore. Like we've been handed this new lens to look at ourselves and the world around us.
It definitely makes you appreciate the complexity and even the mystery of the human body in a whole new way. So for our listeners who have been on this deep dive with us today, what's the one big takeaway you'd want them to leave with?
I think the most important thing is this. Our bodies are way more intricate and intelligent than we often give them credit for. We're not just brains walking around. Our cells are active participants in our lives, constantly learning, adapting, shaping who we are. This research on cellular memory, it's a powerful reminder that we're still figuring out the mysteries of our own biology, and who knows what incredible discoveries are still to come.
Absolutely. And on that note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive into the world of memories beyond the brain, but keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those brain cells, all your other cells, firing.